Hello, everyone, and welcome to Body Bags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I'm Lonnie from Horror Heaven77. Okay. Sometimes whenever I try to review movies for the channel, I try to set myself a challenge and try to see what I can do with it. Like when I reviewed like Texas Chainsaw 3D or The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. It's like I like to sometimes look at horror movies that a lot of people consider they're widely considered to be like really terrible, really less than average, and try to see if I can find any kind of redeemable qualities about them. And sometimes I can succeed, but this one here, I think I can. I really do think I can, for the most part. Now, the movie I'm talking about today, let's see, what year did this baby come out? 2008. I'm talking about George Romero's Survival of the Dead. Now, unfortunately, the late great George Romero, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And I don't know about you guys, but me as a horror fan, I miss him. I miss him to death. I miss his movies. I heard that he had, other scripts for more zombie movies and other scripts that he had written besides. And it's a shame that he never got to do them. Like personally, like I'm sure you guys have heard too. I've always heard the rumor about uh, Romero always wanted, if there was one movie that he had made that he wished he could have remade, it would have been Season of the Witch. And I don't know about you, but I would have loved to have seen what he could have done with it. I really wish he'd had that chance. You know, he was a great master of horror and very creative and just unfortunately just didn't seem like he ever got the opportunities he should have. But he did leave us with a legacy of great movies. Now the problem is a lot of people are going to sit here and say, well, this is not a great movie. It's like, and I'm going to be honest with you, no, it's not. Okay. Now the story it is a departure from other Romero zombie movies. Now, usually when especially the original Romero zombie trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, there were certain factors into it that people came to expect and people came to appreciate and love about the zombie trilogy. And unfortunately, these things are absent from Survival of the Dead. Um, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, first of all, let me just kind of give you a brief idea of the story. Now, the story is about a small, Plum Island. It's a small island off the coast. It's supposed to be Pittsburgh. So you got this character called Sarge, and he's played by Alan Van Sprang, who he popped up as a character in Romero's last three zombie films. In basically kind of like, and the problem is too is like this movie. What you find out is like basically it's kind of like prequels in reverse. And what I mean by that is, okay, his fourth zombie movie was Land of the Dead. And then we come to find out that Romero's fifth zombie movie, Diary of the Dead, was a prequel to Land of the Dead. And then what we find out about Survival of the Dead is the movie in between Diary of the Dead and Land of the Dead. So the timeline kind of gets a little mixed up. So like what ends up being like 4, 5, and 6 actually is kind of more in terms of storyline is more like 5, 6, 4, if that makes any sense. But anyway, so we have this character who in here is just called Sarge, and he had Alan Van Sprang had a small cameo in Diary of the Dead, and they in fact show it at the beginning of Survival of the Dead. And he was pretty much just didn't really have a character name. He was just that guy from Land of the Dead. And then when we see the character in Land of the Dead, he don't know if it's his real name or if it's just a name that he took on. But in Land of the Dead, he plays a character called Brubaker. So we don't know if that's his real name or whatever. But in this movie, he's just called Sarge. Now, at the beginning of the movie, he's upset because he signed on, with the army and Uncle Sam and everything. And he's not happy with the way things are going, the way everything is going to hell with the zombie apocalypse. And he, with a small band of other soldiers, decide that they could do much better, just being on their own and just try to find a place where they can kind of like hide out and just, survive. So anyway, they come across this group of rednecks who turns out, they're racist assholes, and that they murdered these. Well, they didn't murder them, but they torture these African American zombies, put their heads on sticks, and so they come across these rednecks and they have a shootout and stuff. Well, this one young kid, it turns out he ended up falling in with this group of rednecks and they stole stuff from him. But he says, hey, I'm not with these guys. I'm willing to go with you guys. And they stole stuff from me and everything. So this kid ends up joining. Pretty much for most of the movie, they just call him the kid or kid. So they end up there, they band together. And so they're looking for a place, where they can just be alone. Nobody mess with them. And they can just kind of live out their lives. Well, meanwhile, on Plum Island, we basically have kind of a Hatfield and McCoy standoff going on here. We have Kenneth Welsh, who plays Patrick O'Flynn, and then we have Seamus Muldoon. Now, these two families, they and their families and their relatives, basically they're pretty much all the residents of Plum Island, and they've been living on this island for, generations. And then we come to find out, though, too, that when it comes to the topic of the dead coming back to life and zombies and how to deal with them and things like that, Patrick O'Flynn, his basic, he's basically the guy who's like, they're not alive anymore. They're dead. They're zombies. Just go ahead, kill them, get rid of them. They're dead. Let them rest. Put them to sleep. And so him and a small band of followers, they're going around Plum looking for zombies and taking them down. But the problem is Seamus Muldoon, he decides that the zombies, that they're probably just people with an illness and that they just need to wait it out and basically just kind of shepherd and herd the zombies along until some kind of a cure or a vaccine or something like that could be presented, and they could be given this, they'll be fine. Everything will be okay. They go back to normal, everything will be all right. And so, like I said, they have this kind of Hatfield McCoy kind of, feud that's been going on for generations. And it turns out that even O'Flynn's daughter is, that was one thing I do admit I did not like, was a little switcheroo when we come to find out that, they kind of pull that little trick where it's like, oh, this daughter ends up being dead, but then we come to find out, oh no, well, actually there's two of them because there's a twin. I didn't care for that little part of it. That, I admit, that was one gripe I had about the movie. So anyway, so they decide that at first they were talking about Muldoon is talking about he's going to kill O'Flynn, but his daughter convinces Muldoon to spare his life, and so they put him on a boat, send him off. So now O'Flynn is on, basically he's by the water, and he's saying that he's advertising for people to come to Plum Island. Basically, he's trying to find he sets up kind of like a highway robbery scam, and everything gets mixed up when the Sarge and his team arrive, and they all wind up. I'm not going to go into too many details on it, but they all wind up on a boat. They're heading to Plum Island, and he's telling them, yeah, we need to go back there and stuff because I want to settle some old scores. And so, and they were heading to this island anyway because they saw O'Flynn's, sales pitch to go to this island and everything would be okay. So they all go to this island, and then they see what's going on. And then basically, like, O'Flynn once he gets back to the island, his whole thing is he wants to go ahead and finish this feud and kind of settle the score with Muldoon. And so Sarge and his team, Kenny and the kid and Tomboy and Cisco, they all get wrapped up into this whole thing too. And they kind of have to fight everything out. So, and that's pretty much about as much as I'm going to get into it. But overall, what did I think? Okay, overall, the movie is entertaining. Okay, but like going back to what I was saying earlier in the review, there are certain elements that we've come to expect in Romero zombie films, and unfortunately, they're not present in this movie, which I think does hinder the movie to a degree. Okay, like one of the main things is this movie is just kind of more straight up made for it's kind of more it's just more for entertainment. There's not really any like real thought going into this movie, whereas like in Romero's previous other movies, like there was always a social commentary, or there was always some kind of a message that Romero wanted to convey. I mean, especially like in Night of the Living Dead, it's very much apparent with like discrimination and people being at odds with each other, and people who cannot people who can have the tools that they need to survive, but they can't pull together long enough to be able to work out their issues and survive a situation, something like that. Or like the message that he had with like Dawn of the Dead, where people put too much stock in material possessions and letting it ruin their lives, and people just becoming obsessed with owning stuff. And is it enough, and things like that? I mean, I think we all know, that of course, like Day of the Dead, there was, like, can we trust the military, things like that. Land of the Dead, it was kind of like a whole kind of like, uh, class war, between the haves and the have-nots, that kind of stuff. And then the whole in Diary of the Dead, it was always the whole message of, like the whole thing about social media and how it affects us, how technology pretty much has taken over our lives, things like that. There's not really any deep thought into this movie, so that's kind of very lacking. And the other main thing too is, I got to admit, I'm not a fan of the effects in this movie. Okay, I mean, we got spoiled, folks. I mean, that's the best way we could say it. We got spoiled. I mean, yeah, on Night of the Living Dead, you had like Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman, they were doing effects. They had other people helping them do it too and stuff. Romero, he even had a hand in some of the effects on Night of the Living Dead. Then we got really spoiled when good old Tom Savini came in and he did, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead for us. And especially Day of the Dead, I mean, the effects in Day of the Dead are still, I mean, they're still top notch. Some of, if not the absolute best, zombie effects in any movie, Day of the Dead. Then unfortunately we didn't have Tom Savini for Land of the Dead, but we did have an ace up. Romero did have an ace up his sleeve in the fact that Greg Nicotero, who worked under Tom Savini on Day of the Dead, turned around and helped him and Howard Berger, KMB, and all that. They did Land of the Dead. But then unfortunately, then we got to Diary of the Dead. It's like then we kind of started getting away from the great traditional practical effects. And then by Diary of the Dead, we started getting more into CGI effects. And that's kind of the worst part about this movie, in my opinion, is the CGI special effects. They're horrible. They look cartoony. They don't look realistic, as and over the years, like this came out in 2008, it's 2020. The effects in this movie do not hold up. They look very silly. They look very cartoony. They just don't look right. They did not hold up at all. What little bit of practical effects there are look pretty good, but it's just, that's the only downside. I mean, it's like, that's one of the things that really, really, really is missing from this movie is like, we went away from, the great kind of, magician special effects that we used to get with like Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero to now it's all, really cruddy looking CGI effects, and they don't look good. They don't work, and it was much more fun. Like when we used to be able to watch like Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead or something like that, and you see some really cool special effects and you wonder, how did they do that? How did they pull that stuff off, man? That's what was so great about it. There's none of that anymore. Now it's crappy CGI, and that was kind of the thing. So it's like, to me, those are kind of the two main things. They kind of really keep this movie from standing out and being like a real great, Romero zombie movie. But and so yeah, I will say out of the 6 Romero zombie movies, this one definitely is the weakest. But do I hate this movie? No, I don't. Because even with all its, even with all its bumps and bruises, with all of its flaws, it still is a good movie. It's an entertaining movie. You got some fun characters in here. You got some decent character development. It's entertaining. You get some good, some good set pieces. I just kind of wish too, like that was another little gripe, is at the end of the movie when you have the barn, when everything's kind of going down south, and we always get to that part of Romero zombie movie, where the bar, where they're having their showdown at this big barn, and then like inside the barn kind of looks like a big maze. And so like, the characters are like trying to make their way through this maze, and it turns out, the barn is completely filled with zombies that they've been trying to condition them, and they're kind of going a little bit back to Day of the Dead, trying to condition them, trying to keep them from trying to attack everybody, things like that. And so, you got that kind of fun little, kind of like, horror fun house kind of thing going on there. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, but overall, it is a good story. It's an entertaining story. I think some people probably complain there's a little bit too much humor in it for their taste. The movie did try to, that was the thing, Romero always tried to make it a point that with each zombie movie, the zombies, evolve more and more and more. So you do have a zombie in here like riding a horse. You do have a zombie in here that's like trying to drive a car, things like that. And that was always, at first I thought it was kind of silly, but then when you think about it, it's like, okay, no, that was always Romero's plan, was that, as the movies progressed and everything, the zombies were always planning to evolve. So, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, out of the 6 Romero zombie movies, Survival of the Dead definitely is the weakest, but I don't consider it a terrible movie. It's still fun. It's entertaining. It's, got some fun characterization. You got some fun, set pieces, stuff like that. If you like some humor in it, that's good too. But overall, I don't hate this movie, but I will definitely say it is definitely the weakest in the Romero zombie, series. But I'm still glad to have it. We got 6 Romero zombie movies, and of course, I'm sure you all would agree with me. It's all like, especially now that George is gone, I think it would be great if we could have had more. The more Romero zombie movies, the better, at least in my opinion, anyway. But I'm still glad that we have it. I'm still glad, and George, may you rest in peace. So anyway, that's going to do it. If anybody took the time to watch all this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a like. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the Body Bags channel. We have a different reviewer for every day of the week. I'm the Friday reviewer. Different guys. Everybody's doing great stuff. So that's it. Everybody take care. Have a good night. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.